Hello, and welcome to our webinar that is brought to you today by IncentiFind. And this is the next webinar in a series that we have been doing for the lending community that will help you to become a subject matter expert on various topics in sustainability and how you then can help your clients with doing either energy, water, or renewable energy type projects in this case that can help with basically making their homes more energy efficient and sustainable altogether. And today's topic that we'll be touching on is an aspect of renewable energy, and that being the technology of solar. And then we'll also touch on how IncentiFind's products can be incorporated into your sales cycle so you can help residential homeowners with deploying solar improvements to their particular home. Before I do continue, just a quick introduction about myself. So I am leading your webinar for today, and my name is Zuba. And I'm a strategic advisor on the area of residential lending. And I've been serving in this role with IncentiFind for the last 2.5 years. And then a nod to our founder and CEO of IncentiFind, which is Natalie Campos Goodman. And you can certainly use her as your main resource and contact on learning about anything with regard to IncentiFind and how incentives can be found for residential and as well as commercial type projects. So a little introduction about who IncentiFind is. And so IncentiFind is the nation's go-to database for real estate incentives, in which case we're bringing cost savings to new construction or even existing building upgrades, in which case doing that by connecting up these projects with the incentive programs that are available in that particular project's jurisdiction where they're looking to do it. IncentiFind was founded in 2017, and it's still currently based in Houston, Texas, but we serve all 50 states of the United States, and as well as our neighbors to the north in Canada. We have a team of 21 that keeps growing every day, and we have a database that also keeps growing and is currently amassing about 24,000 incentives that are in different jurisdictions across the United States of America. And so as we were just mentioning is that, the idea behind IncentiFind is that we're bridging the gap. So we've been the only kind of, outfit who's basically putting 25,000 projects that are out there and connecting them up to $20 billion worth of incentive programs that are out there, all just using a 2-minute survey which then connects with the most comprehensive database of incentives that are available today. So, that is basically what we are doing here and enabling more of these projects to get done all across the United States and as well as even too with our neighbors to the north in Canada. And as I mentioned, we've had 24,000 incentives and growing amounts of those incentives in our particular database that we do maintain. And the incentives can come in various categories, including tax incentives, grants, fee waivers, rebates, and as well as even other types of bill credits. And again, we do serve in the areas of both of new construction and as well as existing buildings to make them more energy efficient and running maybe on renewable energy as well. And so in the new construction area, we've been very helpful on doing the different kinds of projects on things like brownfield development, different types of certifications for new buildings, working with the opportunity zones, which is a type of tax also incentive program, and as well as even to making buildings that are more smart in terms of how they're being used in this case through smart building technologies. Then in terms of existing buildings, we've been very active as well on areas like in beautification, economic development type efforts, deployment of EV charging stations, and as well as getting involved with PACE financing, which is a type of vehicle to doing energy saving projects as well that is typically repaid on a property owner's tax bill. All right, so that's a little bit just about IncentiFind and who we are. Now just touching on the topics that we'll be going through in today's webinar. So it includes, why is solar energy important? And why should you as a lender be caring about solar energy? Then giving you the basics about solar technology and the types of systems that can be deployed, and as well as how you can incorporate IncentiFind products into your sales cycle to deploy solar type technologies. So why is solar important today? Well, certainly first and foremost, we know that climate change still remains one of these, key and sort of, worsening to the existential threats that we're dealing with, which again, the way climate change does progress is because of the emissions of carbon emitting fuel sources, in this case, for either producing our electricity or certainly heating our homes in this case as well, which is typically done either by fuel oil or natural gas. And so those particular those sources of energy will then produce a lot of carbon emissions in this case, which then continues to worsen the climate change issues that we're dealing with still at this point. Then because of rising energy costs, we do see that, utility rates keep on rising across the country. And, because of that, with, homes being more inefficient over time, they're going to be using more and more of that energy. And then, especially then if those utility rates then keep going up, that's just going to make energy costs get way out of control for a homeowner. And so it becomes very unaffordable and then also even unpredictable as more and more time is going to pass for that homeowner to be able to afford the energy that's going to cost them in this case to keep their home to be able to operate at any given time. And as a result of those rising energy costs, it's going to lead to tighter and tighter budgets because, again, with those inefficient homes, with more aging equipment that's utilizing, again, all this more costlier forms of energy, it's leading then to more competing priorities with, people who are seeing stagnating wages in this case. They're not seeing as, great amount of income in their pockets. And so that creates basically, again, that competition then for what remaining dispensable income they have at their disposal, that they can then be able then to, prioritize then other aspects of their lives in this case. And then we'll have to then, maybe have that less money to spend on everything that they need to do for a particular home. So, they may have to now be forced to think about, well, do I pay for my mortgage? Do I pay for food? Do I put my that money for my bills for energy in this case? So it's going to create, again, all those more of those tensions in this case for homeowners in this case. That's just then going to lead to more difficulties economically. And then their inability to be able to afford all those costs at a given time. So then why should you as a lender then care about solar? So at the same time, as I was just mentioning, with rising energy costs, if homeowners don't find a way then to control their energy consumption, then those rising energy prices are going to lead to even higher costs, which again, it's going to lead to competing priorities. And it's going to make it harder and harder for them to be able to pay for all the costs associated with a home, which includes certainly their mortgage. And then getting back to saying about climate change. So reason why, though, it should impact a lender in this case is because climate change's worsening impacts really can actually affect the safety and soundness of the asset that you're holding then your mortgage upon. And then that's leading then in this case to more, again, strife and concerns about whether or not you're going to be able to have that asset, for a long period of time in this case to be able to secure your mortgage to it. And as we've seen certainly with wildfires, droughts, and floods, and all these other issues that are usually created by climate change, it's leading into then this particular issue now that you might be concerned if you're going to be able to hold on to that asset for the long term and know that it's going to be safe and sound for years to come. But then certainly you as a lender, you should care about solar because again, it gives you the ability to become a subject matter expert on a new particular area. Because if you learn now about renewable energy, it's going to help you become more experienced with another topic. And then this is going to maybe even allow you to increase business opportunities and create maybe even a whole new kind of lending line that's going to allow you to go and then be able then to do additional lending for these types of projects that you would not have been able maybe to do before. Because you might not have been as well versed on these particular topics. So all of these, I think, together are important for why you as a lender should be caring about these renewable technologies and then being able to work with residential homeowners to help them to deploy these projects for their properties. All right, so let me go into now talking about the basics about solar and then how we basically would be seeing these types of projects and how they're deployed on residential applications. So the types of solar systems that I'll be talking about today are just first and foremost your standard rooftop, solar panel system, which is usually made up of what are known as these photovoltaic type systems in this case, and panels that are put on a rooftop of a home. Solar thermal, which is usually good for applications of helping to heat a home, as well as even to heat hot water. for a home's use. And as well as then a ground mount solar system as well, which might be seen in more of these rural and sort of agricultural type applications, in which case it's typical that a residential homeowner will then have their house on the same property as their commercial farming operations that they might have. So, and then they might be able to install a larger system in this case because they have far more land to use. And then we'll talk about that technology in those applications. So, all right, so yes, I mentioned, so the first of these types of systems I'll be touching on is on solar panels, just as an ordinary rooftop type system to start with. So as we're seeing with more lucrative incentives that are out there, and especially as the price of solar continues to decrease, we're seeing more rapid adoption of rooftop solar systems now for homeowners all across the country. And according to the United States Department of Energy, solar deployment has increased 35-fold to 62.5 gigawatts of that renewable energy that's being produced since the year of 2008. So certainly over the last 12 plus years, we're continuing to see that rapid deployment of these types of systems, and that is helping then increasing amount of homeowners to do these energy saving type projects like this. And then since 2014, the cost of solar has actually decreased by about 50%, which now is, of course, making solar more affordable and more certainly approachable for homeowners to go and actually consider doing, because it once wasn't so very accessible, certainly before 2014, because there wasn't as widespread adoption of those type of technologies for their homes. So this is actually something that's going to be being seen more because the cost is going down. And then we still have incentives out there to help defray the cost to homeowners nowadays. And so typically what we see on an average residential rooftop system is usually, it's helping to offset about 5 kilowatts worth of energy in this case. And that's usually considered in demand in this case for the home. Because normally, they'll be, constrained by how much roof space that they can put a solar system and the size of their property. And then usually, certainly in a home, there's not anticipated to be as high of an energy usage as, say, in a commercial application, where they might need then a much larger solar system to offset that electric consumption that they might use. So we certainly expect in a residential setting that the size of a solar system is going to largely be on that sort of 5 kilowatt range on average, and stay in that smaller range. And then on average, a solar system of this size can usually range in cost anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 for the homeowner, before basically incentives might be put into place. In which case I'll touch on in a little bit what kind of incentives that you can get for these types of projects. And then depending on the territory and the conditions by a home, the average amount of production of a system, in this case of say of a size of like 5 kilowatts, is somewhere in the order of 350 to 850 kilowatt hours of clean energy production each month. So again, that shouldn't seem like it's too much in this case, because it's probably not. But again, this is something that still helps to offset probably much of their residential home usage in this case of electricity. And that really does go a long way to help now getting their power from a renewable source, as opposed to maybe pulling it from a utility, which might still be having much of their grid composed of electricity fuel sources that are coming from fossil fuels, for example. So again, this helps then on the matter of climate change, and it's also it's making them more resilient and sustainable as a homeowner. So what kind of savings then could you be looking at for a typical homeowner if they're going to go and switch, say, from the utility provided usage of electricity to, say, a solar system? So let's say in this example, they're paying, say, 10 cents per kilowatt hour as their utility rate, what they're paying, say, to the utility right now. And then if they get a solar system, well, then they might be offsetting the very same rate in this case than what they would have been paying to the utility at any given time. And so let's say on average that we got maybe a bigger home in this case, right? And that they're consuming 850 kilowatt hours of electricity each and every month. And then the solar system then is, when you put that into place, that's going to help reduce the amount of electricity consumed from the utility, but doesn't maybe get rid of all of their electric usage from the utility. So they still are going to pull some electricity in the form of what's provided by the utility to the tune of 250 kilowatts hours per month. And then, so what the renewable energy source is helping giving them then is at least 600 kilowatt hours, say, per month in usage in this case, that now is offsetting some of the previous usage that they'd had in their home that they were drawing from the utility. And so in terms of the cost, say before, if they were going still and drawing all that energy from the utility, then they maybe might have been seeing just at least on the consumption side of their bill, that's an $85 per month cost in this case. And now that doesn't factor into other aspects of their utility costs, which could also include things like, transmission fees, other delivery fees in this case, which are also other added costs that are on a typical utility bill. So just for simplicity's sake, this is just looking at, say, their actual generation rate in this case and the supply that they're getting from a utility source. And then if they're then going and pulling just 250 kilowatt hours in per month in the solar example, if then they're getting much of their electricity from the solar system, so now their generation of what they're only having to pay for to the utility is just down to $25. So now you're seeing a total electric cost savings, at least on the consumption side of the bill, is only going to maybe be about $60 in this case. So that's basically a major savings already just on the consumption side of the utility bill. And then what certainly is also helpful in terms of them getting their electricity from a renewable source is now you're hedging now against potential energy price increases in the future. Because now if you're getting much of your energy produced from a solar system, you're not as worried as much now anymore about what the utility prices are, because you're basically getting your free renewable energy from the solar system that's sitting on the roof of your house. And so now that's going to potentially, give you even increased savings over time, because now you're going to be potentially seeing that utility rate going up higher and higher, and you're guarding yourself against those higher increases in costs because now you're just simply getting much of your energy now from a renewable energy source. Okay, so in terms of the types of incentives that are seen in some jurisdictions, so let's go through a couple of examples. So for example, in Los Angeles, they can get what's known as a fixed roof lease payment for solar in this case. So in that example, you might have it where a third party maybe owns that solar system in this case, and they maybe just will lease out the residential roof space in this case to a third party owner. And then they're basically then doing is paying a fixed cost then to that third party owner in this case for getting their solar then from that, getting their electricity from that solar source. So that's going to be very helpful in this case then too, to help reduce their energy costs over time, because again, it might hedge them from what they're going to be paying to the utility. They could also get access to a federal tax credit in this case, which is commonly known as the investment tax credit, or ITC for short. And I'll go into talking a little bit in terms of what those rates look like and what they can do to help with actually paying for a solar system over time. And I'll go down to another example in Atlanta. They actually will give you a one-time rebate of up to $4,500 as the city to go and help with the deployment of a solar system for a residential homeowner, in which case then they can also combine that in with a federal tax incentive that they can also take out when they do file their taxes, in this case, at the end of the year. Okay, so the next example of a technology that it can be installed in a residential home could be a solar thermal installation. So as I was mentioning in this case, what solar thermal then does, it's actually helping to collect that solar energy, which then can be used to produce electricity to either heat water or to heat your home. So in using solar thermal can now offset now the fossil fuel energy usage, and I was using as examples of fuel oil or natural gas before, which are typically then used in those homes to create the hot water or to even heat the spaces within the home. Now you're offsetting then how much of the fossil fuel usage that you're using, so that now you can be even more sustainable as a homeowner in this case for basically installing a system like this. And then this can lead to, again, a great amount of energy and dollar savings, both on certainly the hot water as well as the home heating cost side. So let me go into talking a little bit about what that could potentially look like. So again, I'm just using, again, a very, simplistic example in this case, right? So let's say, for example, a homeowner is paying maybe 10 cents, per therm in this case, as their natural gas rate, in this case, say for their hot water that they're heating in their home, and as well as the same exact rate for them when they're going to heat their home with basically using natural gas as well. So in that case, combined between, say, them needing that natural gas consumption for heating their hot water and as well as their actual individual home heating, you're talking about, in this case, then their combined usage is about 650 therms each and every month, in which case that's translating to a total cost between those two particular end uses would be $65. And again, that's just really on a consumption side of the bill. That's not talking about, again, other particular charges that they'll be paying for in terms of delivery and the transmission of that natural gas through the pipelines to the home. So now let's say they install a solar thermal in this case, right? And so say that then they're able to cut in half how much energy they're getting then from the usage of heating their hot water or heating their home through natural gas purposes in half. And so by cutting that in half, now they're cutting their bill in half. And so that actually helps now to decrease then how much energy costs that they're having to spend, say, to their natural gas provider in half, which now makes maybe that total bill only to be about $32.50 to that homeowner. And so that can see a pretty decent savings in this case. And that helps them to also reduce, again, their fossil fuel usage when they're going to provide heat to heat water in this case, and as well as providing home heating during the winter seasons. Okay, so then the types of solar thermal incentives that are out there. So for example, in Washington, D.C., they will have a federal solar water heater tax credit that they'll give right to that homeowner. And in Chicago, they also provide it through in the forms of basically giving them a solar permitting incentive, in which case it offers projects that have green elements a sort of priority review process, but then also maybe too, it can help cut the costs in this case for basically then maybe on their permitting in this case that they would need to install a solar system in this case on the roof of their building. And then there's also, again, a federal solar water heater tax credit as well that they can take advantage of when they file their taxes, in this case, at the end of the tax year. Okay, and then finally, in terms of a type of technology is like in terms of a ground mount solar system, as I mentioned, this could be something that could be better in sort of, residential applications that would either require more solar panels than say the roof can handle, and also maybe would have, ample land space to site the system. So I think commonly in this case, you might see this used, and again, in agricultural type, applications where, they have, in this case, not only maybe say their residential usage in this case of what maybe they're going to offset through a solar system, but also too, they might even use that same solar system to help then offset their commercial farming operations that they also have on the very same site. So in an example like this, for a residential ground mount type system, the average size is somewhere between 15 and 20 kilowatts to help produce that electric energy in this case for these particular types of applications. And then the cost for this kind of ground mount system is certainly more expensive than say a rooftop system because number one, it's larger in size, but then two, because of the infrastructure that has to go in to site the solar on the land in this case. So that all in this case is going to lead to certainly higher costs, in which case the average range is anywhere between $29,000 and $35,000. Also, again, before incentives are included in those costs to help defray the costs for a project. So one example of an incentive that's out there is actually run by the United States Department of Agriculture, which is known as the Rural Energy for America Grant, or REAP grant for short. And so the REAP grant provides funding and guaranteed loan financing for rural small businesses and agricultural producers across the United States, which can be used for implementing renewable energy systems, including in these ground mount solar applications that would be good for an agricultural application. If an agricultural property doubles as the primary residence and is located in that rural area, then a homeowner can install a ground mount solar system and it can be in fact eligible for this particular grant. So again, if you deal with any homeowners who are also doubling as these commercial farming operations, know that these are a type of a grant in this case that can actually be used for this particular type of project. And a REAP grant, again, defines a rural area as a city or a town that has a population of less than 50,000 inhabitants. The other thing to note with a REAP grant is that normally the grant is not paid out until the system is in service. So, there might be a little bit of waiting time in order to get the grant in this case, but, it normally has to be doled out after basically the project is seen to be in construction and is in fact installed and being energized to produce energy. And so that is also, again, another great type of incentive that is out there that's offered by the federal government that in agricultural applications, the ground mount systems can then be able to avail itself to. And then certainly the only other incentive that would be good for a ground mount system across the board, it would seem to be, would be the investment tax credit that I was alluding to before. So as of right now, with the COVID relief bill that was passed in the end of December of 2020, they actually had included in this bill the provision to extend the current rate of the solar ITC incentive in this case at the 26% level, which was what it was in 2020. And if that was not passed, it was actually going to sunset down to 22% as of this year. But because of that provision in the COVID relief bill, now in 2021 and in 2022, the solar ITC tax credits now at the 26% level until then, and then in 2023, it'll decrease then to 22%. And then by 2024, then there will no longer be a residential system that can qualify for getting the investment tax credit going forward. So that has certainly, again, been a change that occurred, which case can help basically solar systems for residential homeowners across the board for all these different types of projects that would be done in terms at least of the rooftop and as well as then the ground mount solar installations that we just touched on. Okay, so let's say, for example, we do a project in this case that can provide a whole host of different types of improvements in this case, for a property. And let's say, for example, we're working on a project, in which case it's not a water improvement, but say it's an energy saving improvement. And the energy efficient roof in this case, and say a rooftop solar system, in which case that could be a good thing to go and do all at the same time. And then as well as providing insulation and an HVAC new air conditioning type unit for the property. This type of big project will be over $44,000 in total cost. But then with the incentives that they're getting in this case, they could get potentially upwards of $8,400 in these incentive savings right off the top of the cost of the project. So that can include $2,800 for the energy efficient roof, about $1,000 per year for the rooftop solar system through, say, this lease arrangement, $3,100 for insulation that would go into the building, and as well as then $1,500 for that new HVAC and air conditioning system that they put into the home. And so ultimately, the project, which started at over $44,000, but then got $8,400 in incentives, now the final loan cost is only going to be $36,000, which that, by the way, represents nearly 19% in total cost savings already for the property owner before even they've had to think about taking out any kind of a loan, in which case then you as a lender would come in after, in this case, to be able to provide to the homeowner so that now they could deploy all these particular improvements, including the rooftop solar system, as an example of what we were just going over in the webinar today. And so as a whole, in this case, so looking at just this Los Angeles example and saying just under 5,000 square foot home in this case that we were using as our base example just now. So there is no current incentives for a ground mount solar system that Los Angeles would provide. But there are, if you're a low income homeowner in this case, they have what is known as the CSI Thermal Loan Low Income Program, which can provide rebates up to nearly $5,400. There is no cost solar opportunities as well for low income homeowners through the Grid Alternatives program that they offer in Los Angeles. They can also then provide, as part of the utility there, a solar rooftop program as well, in which case they can also have fixed roof lease programs in this case, which can provide a payment that's anywhere between $4,800 to $12,000 to the homeowner again at any given time. And then certainly they also would get a solar system tax credit in this case, in which case, as I just mentioned, is actually up to 26% for this year and next year, going down to then to 22% in 2023 as well. And then for solar thermal, in this case, there's also then a solar thermal incentive program as well that provides single-family solar water heating systems that helps to displace, natural gas consumption, can then qualify for rebates up to nearly $4,400, while also electricity displacing systems can then qualify for up to just over $1,800 in this case. So these are the types of incentives that can be garnered in Los Angeles if you yourself or a homeowner there was seeking to go and put a solar system on your property, whether it be certainly a rooftop system or certainly a solar thermal type installation. All right, so that just gives you a sense about the types of solar technologies that exist today. And now I'm going to touch on a little bit with IncentiFind's quick summary product, which is something you can incorporate into your sales cycle that you can then help a residential homeowner with doing a renewable energy upgrade to their home itself. So certainly if you have a property owner who comes into you who's piqued by the interest of doing a renewable energy project, this would be certainly then a good time to introduce our quick summary product. And in the quick summary product in that report is an affordable tool that, just as the namesake is suggesting, it quickly summarizes how many incentives are available to a borrower in the territory where, say, they're going to make the renewable energy improvement to their home. And then a quick summary can get borrowers then into the door to lenders to where then you'll differentiate yourself from your competition, because now you'll have that inside information now on incentive programs that, say, a competing lender would not know about, in which case then you'll be able to show that you're bringing more valuable data and added value to the homeowner that you're working with. And in this this really typical type of improvement that you could be doing in this case with residential homeowners, it can naturally then be something where it can be done on a whole host of different types of financing type projects. So that can be things with regard to a home equity loan type project, refinancing of an existing loan or mortgage, for a new construction project, or even for renovation portfolios in this case, of a whole host of different projects that you might be seeing in this case for your particular lending institution. And this is a quick example of what the quick summary report will look like. So in the example of the project that we were just even talking about, that's in Los Angeles, California. So let's say, for example, they are looking at doing a renewable energy source. You would then be able to tell them that in and around Los Angeles, you have 24 renewable energy type project incentive programs that are available. In which case, I just touched on the example of what's the solar rooftop program in this case, that the utility would be able to issue fixed monthly lease payments, in this case to that homeowner, so that then they can actually then get some added financial benefits for having a rooftop solar system on their particular property. All right, so then let's talk about actually how you would put this into the sales cycle. So in the beginning, and that's actually where we actually would want you maybe to introduce this whole notion of the quick summary. But the bottom line is that you're going to probably find out again about the type of project they're doing right at the application phase. So they may be coming into you for a loan to say, well, okay, we want to install a rooftop solar system of some kind. And they're going to make that known on the application that they're putting into you for getting considered for financing. And so this intake process should allow you then as a lender to find out the type of project the borrower is doing and what they want to seek financing for. And then there are ways then you can think about renewable energy then being incorporated into the project as well, even say if they don't come to you about saying that they're interested in wanting to pursue that type of project for one in which they're seeking financing for. So let me give you examples of really just how you can deploy rooftop solar in this case, or even any of the other types of solar technologies in this case that I just touched on for certain kinds of projects. So let's say, for example, maybe they're coming in for a basic home renovation project, right? So where it's a standard sort of, renovation project, they want to improve the aesthetics of the home, or maybe even say they want to come in to say that they're using a loan to maybe replace a roof, in this case, at the time that they're doing an actual standard renovation project. Well, then you could say to them, well, if you're putting a new roof, say, on that house as part of the renovation project you're doing, that might be a good time to think about. Maybe you're going to put a new solar system on the property, or you're going to put maybe a solar thermal installation, in this case, on the property. Because, for a solar system, in this case, the solar panels could probably last just as long as probably that roof is going to then be, that say they might put on the home in this case. So let's say they put a new roof on, and that new roof is going to last maybe say for 30 to 35 years. The solar system in this case has been seen that the panels can last anywhere from 25 to 30 years, typically, in terms of the useful life of that improvement. So that gives then an equal sort of playing field in terms of the life of the roof. In this case, that's going to be then be supplanted with putting a rooftop solar system on it. They're going to be done hand in hand, and that then the lives of these in this case are going to go together like that. So that could be one example of when you could suggest a solar system and how you could go about doing so. If you're doing, say, a gut rehabilitation project with that homeowner in this case, in which case now they're gutting a lot of the internal aspects of the home, but also too, they might also be, doing maybe siding in this case, right? Maybe redo the siding, and also maybe redoing a roof as well for that particular project. And so that too is, a good time to think about rooftop solar, a solar thermal installation, or even too, if they're thinking then about doing a ground mount system in this case as well. If the property is big enough to be able to handle it, and maybe say this is maybe a little larger home, or maybe in a home in this case where maybe they want to add extensions maybe onto it as part of a bigger rehabilitation project, and it's going to require more energy usage eventually for that home, then that's maybe when you have to think about doing a ground mount system in this case, because now it's going to offset more electric usage maybe for an even larger home. So that's also maybe how to think about how to introduce those technologies in this case for this type of project. And then lastly, for a new construction project, given that now it's a ground up, a newly constructed home where maybe it is, again, a home that didn't exist before, all three, I think, can be, added to a particular project. It could be where if the home certainly is big enough, you can put some rooftop solar on that home. If you maybe need additional solar in this case, and then the property is big enough to be able to handle getting good production from a solar system, then certainly a ground mount could be also in the offing as well. And then even solar thermal can then be added into the equation to help with producing hot water and heating the home as well. So, I think there's always, great ways and different ways to think about incorporating solar into these different types of projects, and that you can then be a great education source in this case, for a particular project. And apologies, I didn't catch this one little water efficiency part here, but if you wanted to say, just because they say they're not going into a renewable energy project in this case, so don't assume that maybe they're not looking for that opportunity. And so with what knowledge that you've picked up from this webinar today, you may be able to show and demonstrate how their project then could incorporate renewable energy principles into the project that they're doing. And you might just pique their interest then in pursuing basically doing a renewable energy project for their property, so that then they can be more sustainable, guard them against, again, higher and higher utility costs, and that then they can naturally be helping, again, our planet as a whole, so that, again, climate change is not ravaging our society for years to come. And so that is today's webinar. I hope that you did find it useful in terms of learning about solar technologies and how you can help a residential homeowner with deploying that system in this case, and then also too, showing how IncentiFind can then add more value to a project in this case, and getting a homeowner to consider doing this type of renewable energy type improvements. Certainly we invite you to subscribe to our IncentiFind YouTube channel. And certainly we hope that you will stay tuned for future webinars that we would talk about different sustainability topics. And we certainly invite you also to take a look at some of our previous webinars that we touched on other topics, including on energy efficiency and water efficiency type projects. So thank you very much, and we hope you have a great day.